Hello and welcome to our video on simplifying and evaluating expressions involving absolute value. In this video, we're going to talk about what absolute value is and how we can simplify an expression that includes absolute value. To start off, let's take a look and see our definition here that absolute value is a mathematical representation of distance on the number line. The mathematical symbol for absolute value is these two lines that go down. It looks like basically straight parentheses, if you will. And we will treat them often like parentheses with an additional aspect to it, which we're going to talk about. All right, it says the absolute value of 3, written as the absolute value of 3, which is how I would state that. All right, so when I read this right here, I say the absolute value of 3. All right, so the absolute value of 3 represents its distance from 0 on the number line. And let's take a look at our number line down here below. And I want you to look at this blue aspect of it right here, all right? So as I look at this section right here, I see that 3 is 3 away from 0. It's 3 spaces away from 0. That's why we call it the number 3. And therefore, the absolute value of 3 is 3. So I can say the absolute value of 3 is equal to 3, all right? On the number line above, notice that negative 3 is a distance of 3 units from 0 on the number line. Similarly, 3 is also a distance of 3 units from 0 on the number line. In both cases, their absolute values will both equal a positive 3. All right, and that's what we want to see here, that 3 now, if I look at this one right here, this negative 3 is also 1, 2, 3 away from 0 on the number line. So if I were to say, as we're going to see in a moment, the absolute value of negative 3, it is also equal to 3. And that's where we see that the absolute value of 3 is 3, and the absolute value of negative 3 is 3, because we're always looking at distance. Remember that we always express distance as a positive quantity. The distance exists. In this case, the negative is merely the direction. Negative, well, I'll do that, hold up. I'll do it in red, I'll keep it there. Our positive is this direction to the right on the number line, all right, where negative is merely saying that we're moving to the left. So negative is just a direction away from 0, left or right on our number line. But the distance still exists. It's still there, and therefore distance we always talk about as a positive amount because it's something that does exist and it's in front of us and you can count it. It's right there. Negative is merely referring to the direction left from 0 on our number line. All right, so that's what we're looking at. So remember that we always express distance as a positive quantity, all right? You would never say that the distance from your home to the library is negative 5 miles, all right? That just doesn't happen. We talk about it's 5 miles just in one direction. So as you'd say east or west, all right, we're talking about negative being to the left and positive being to the right. To mathematically represent the distance between negative 3 and 0 on the number line, we would write the absolute value of negative 3, and that's what we see there. We see it's the absolute value of negative 3, and as we said, that is 3. All right? And then finally, we can state that the absolute value of negative 3 is 3. Similarly, we can state the absolute value of 3 is 3, as we mentioned earlier, and notice that both answers are positive. In fact, absolute value answers will always be positive since they represent distances. So let's try a few examples down here. All right? In this example, let's take a look. All right, the first one, the absolute value of negative 8. Well, that is 8. It just makes it positive. What's the absolute value of 8? Well, that is 8. All right, both negative 8 and 8 are a distance of 8 away from 0. Negative 8 is merely to the left of 0, 8 ticks on the number line, and 8 is to the right of 0, 8 ticks on the number line. All right, what about 0? What about in C, the absolute value of 0? Well, the absolute value of 0 is 0. All right, what about D? Try the rest of these out, see how you do. All right, coming back in, hopefully you realize this one here is 14. The absolute value of 14 is 14. Here, the absolute value of negative 30 is 30. The absolute value of 30 is also 30. Absolute value of negative 1 is 1, and absolute value of negative 100 is 100. You're just taking whatever number is inside that absolute value bars and making it positive. That's what absolute value does. It always takes the one number inside and makes it positive. So what if absolute value has more than one number inside of the absolute value bars? What do you do then? Well, we're going to take note here that absolute values should be treated as a grouping symbol in the order of operations. In other words, as a parenthesis. Therefore, you must evaluate the absolute value before moving on with the problem. Secondly, you must simplify the expression inside the absolute value before you can evaluate it. Let's take a look at a few examples down here. All right, take a look at example A. In A, we have the absolute value of 5 times 4, and then we're adding 3. So the absolute value of 5 times 4 plus 3. Well, we must treat this as a group, as a parenthesis, in the same way that we would look at it as the parenthesis here of 5 times 4 and then plus 3, and I would multiply 5 times 4 first. We're going to do that same thing, and when we multiply 5 times 4, we get 20. Once we have one number inside our absolute value bars, we then take the absolute value of that one number and pull it outside of our absolute value bars, in this case, 20. And then we can continue on with the rest of the expression, in this case, taking the term 20 and the term 3 and adding them together to get 23. All right, take a look at example B. I want you to try B on your own and see how you do. All right, coming back in, hopefully you did what was inside our absolute value bars first, taking the absolute value of negative 3 minus 4, giving me negative 7. Then we took the absolute value of negative 7, bringing it out as a positive number. And then I can combine it with that minus 8 to give me negative 1 altogether. Notice my final result at the very end is negative. That is okay. It's what is inside your absolute value bars that is made positive, and then you continue on. All right, try C. In C, hopefully you realize there's nothing outside of our absolute value bars, but inside we do have 30 divided by 6. That would give me the absolute value of 5. And the absolute value of 5 is 5. And we're done. All right, but what about D? As we move on to D, we now notice that we've not only got things inside of our absolute value bars, but we have this negative 4. And it's directly next to our absolute value bars. And if we thought about this as parentheses, and that negative 4 was directly next to it, then we would have negative 4 times the group, negative 2 squared minus 3. We're going to treat that the same way. And to start, we have to still take care of what's inside our absolute value first. Inside, we follow our order of operations. Notice the 2 is being squared. We have the opposite of 2 squared. Notice that negative 2 is not in parentheses. So 2 squared is 4. The opposite of 4 is negative 4. That's why we have a negative 4 here. Negative 4 minus 3 gives me negative 7. All right, and that gets me all down to one number inside my absolute value bars. Then I take the absolute value of that. And notice they put negative 4 times 7. I actually write it like this personally, where I just change my absolute value bars into parentheses and make the result inside positive. That way I'm continuing to treat what was inside as one group, and anything outside of it is then being multiplied to it. All right, so in this case here I have negative 4 times that 7. That gives me a negative 28. Then I can combine these two terms, because if you look at the very beginning, thinking about circling terms, this is all one term here. This is a term here. Terms are parts of our expression separated by addition and subtraction, and we can't combine terms until each term is down to one number. And that's what we see at this last step down here, where we have negative 28 minus 5, which then gives us a final result of negative 33. All right, let's try it on our own. You go ahead and try E. All right, coming back in, let's work through it together. We had negative 8 times the absolute value of, notice this time the negative 4 is inside parentheses, so I'm doing negative 4 squared, which is negative 4 times negative 4, giving me 16. Then I have the minus. Notice the minus is not inside parentheses with that 3, so I'm only looking at 3 squared there, which is 9. If I continue on, I'll find out that 16 minus 9 gives me 7. And the absolute value of 7 is 7. I just change it to parentheses and make sure that it's positive at that point. And then I continue on, negative 8 times 7. And if you multiply negative 8 times 7, I'm going to get negative 56. And negative 56 plus 6 gives me a negative 50 altogether. All right, hopefully you got that same answer. All right, let's keep going. Let's give you a few more examples here to practice on your own. I'm going to change example number 1 here before you start, so don't do it as you see it here. All right, I'm going to put 10 minus 2 times the absolute value of negative 5 minus 2. All right, so don't do this one right here. All right, But now, at this point, go ahead and pause the video and try example number 1. All right, coming back in. Maybe you would have been tempted, and I'm going to show you this part right here. Maybe you would have been tempted to do 10 minus 2 first and get 8, but that would be a major mistake. If we look at this, 10 is its own term, and 2 times the group, the absolute value of negative 5 minus 2, is its own group. So we cannot do 10 minus 2 first. All right, our order of operations say we have to do what's inside our parentheses first. So here I have 10 minus 2 times the absolute value of negative 5 minus 2 gives me negative 7. And then we take that absolute value, so 10 minus 2 times 7, because I'm going to make that positive, and I put it into parentheses. And continuing on, I'm going to have 10 minus 2 times 7 is 14. And that is going to give me a final result. I'm going to write it off to the right over here because I'm running out of room. Final result there of negative 4. All right, try number 2 now. All right, come back in. Let's see how you did. Number 2 here. All right, we have nothing outside, so we're just going to follow our order of operations inside, giving me negative 4 minus 6 squared is going to be 36. Negative 4 minus 36 is the absolute value of negative 40. And the absolute value of negative 40 is 40. All right, that would be my final result there. I'm going to skip 3 for the moment because I don't want to scroll down, but we're going to come over here to 4 now at the right, so I want you to try 4 now. All right, come back in. Again, our negative 9 minus the absolute value. I have to do what's inside first, giving me negative 4 minus 7, which is negative 11. Then I'm going to take the absolute value of negative 11, and notice that minus is still out front there, and that negative 11 is going to become positive 11. And now essentially I have negative 9 minus 11 minus 8. And we can put that all together, negative 9 minus 11, those two pieces here are going to give me a negative 20. And if I combine that with that negative 8, we'll have a total of negative 28 as my final result. All right, try 5. All right, inside 5, be careful. Notice in that very first one, it is negative 2 squared, which means the opposite of 2 squared. So I have to do the 2 squared to give me 4. And the opposite of 4 is negative 4. On the other side, I've got minus 3 squared, which is 9. So please be careful. Those parentheses there's no parentheses around the negative 2 that's making the negative 2 being squared. It's just 2 squared and then made opposite. And then at this point, negative 4 minus 9 is going to give me a negative 13 inside my absolute value bars, and I'm going to turn and make that positive as a result. All right, that's our first 4 examples. Let's take a look at the next ones. All right, going a little bit out of order just because of my scrolling and the way it was written here. But now I want you to take a look at example 3. Go ahead and try it on your own. All right, coming back, hopefully you've seen 5 squared. I'm not going to touch that just yet, but I am going to take care of this inside. And I've got the opposite of 4 squared, so that's 16 plus 3. All right, and then I am going to take care of this 5 squared out here because I am going to do my exponents before I multiply anyway, so I'm just going to write that as 25. At the same time that I take care of what's inside my absolute value bars, negative 16 plus 3 is going to give me a negative 13. All right? And then we can take the absolute value of that negative 13, so I would have 25 times 13. All right? And 25 times 13, if you did that together correctly, you would have gotten 325 as my final result. All right? Try 6. All right, inside 6, we've got that negative 4 out front, but inside, let's follow our order of operations. I want to do each piece here. I'm going to look, this is its own term out here, all right, and this is its own term. All right, so I can do that negative 3 squared first, which is the opposite of 3 squared, so that's the opposite of 9, in other words, negative 9. And then minus, over here I've got a group that's being squared, and that's 2 minus 3, that's a negative 1. And I'll take care of squaring that in a moment. So following this down, I have negative 9, and then minus negative 1 squared is going to be 1. And then I've got negative 4 times the absolute value of negative 9 minus 1 is negative 10. And the absolute value of negative 10 is 10, giving me a last piece here of negative 4 times 10, which is going to give me negative 40 altogether. All right, that's simplifying expressions with absolute value. Good luck.